Tonight's journey takes us to Valinor, in the final years of the trees. During those last years, the Noldor gathered in Tirion beneath the alternating silver light of Tulperion and the gold of Laurelin. Their Fëanor, greatest of the elven craftsmen, guarded 3 jewels containing the light of the trees, while Melkor prepared the attack that would darken Valinor and send the Noldor towards exile. At Tirion, beneath the Mind and Eldelieva, you stand beneath a sky softened by silver light. Tulperion, the silver tree, rises beyond the white terraces, his branches spreading like quiet waves above the guarded realm of Valinor. His radiance falls across the stone, touches the towers of Tirion, and gathers in pale pools between the houses of the Noldor. For a while, the city rests beneath that cool illumination. Then the silver slowly thins, and another brightness begins to gather in the west. Laurelin, the golden tree, opens her leaves, and warm radiance moves across the land of Aman. The gold reaches the courtyards, warms the edges of fountains, and glows upon walls where carved histories wait beneath the changing light. Neither tree shines forever. The light waxes and wanes in alternating periods, so Valinor knows no single, constant daylight. Silver yields to gold, gold recedes towards silver, and the world breathes between them. You walk through one of the quiet courtyards in Tirion, while the last silver of Tulperion lies across the paving stones. The air is cool, touched by the high slopes of Tuna, and the pale walls hold the faint fragrance of flowering trees. Behind a low arch, an elvish workshop murmurs with patient activity. Tools touch wood, metal, and stone with soft, measured sounds. Somewhere nearby, a chisel makes 3 delicate taps before resting. The Noldor have always given shape to what they remember. Their identity lies in making, but also in language, law, and the preservation of beautiful things. You pass shelves filled with vessels, jewels, books, and instruments whose purposes are known to many generations. Each object carries a story, while every word has been polished like silver. Each craftsperson works within a long chain of remembered hands. Across the courtyard, a young scholar reads from a tablet, while an older artisan adjusts a narrow clasp upon a golden box. Their voices remain low beneath the vaulted roofs. The changing light enters through open colonnades, first silver at the eastern side, then faint gold along the western pillars. Dust moves slowly in the brightness. The city feels protected, complete, and distant from every sorrow beyond its borders. Before the great works of the Noldor, before the names of the Silmarils became bound to grief, the Valar had summoned the elves from Middle-earth to Aman. They wished the firstborn to dwell near them, beneath the light of the 2 trees, and within the peace of Valinor. Many elves followed the summons across the great distance. Some remained in Middle-earth, but those who came to Aman entered a land shaped by music, memory, and long tranquility. The Noldor settled chiefly in Tirion, the city raised upon Tuna. Around you their houses climb the hill in white terraces, while their towers look towards the lands of the Valar. The Vanyar dwell nearer to the heart of Aman, while the Teleri maintain their deep connection with the shores and the sea. These peoples are distinct in custom and temperament, though they share the ancient memory of awakening beneath the stars of Middle-earth. The morning gold has now reached the southern walls of Tirion. Laurelin's radiance warms the leaves of garden trees and draws a faint sweetness from the grass. The stone beneath your feet is no longer cold, though shaded passages retain the freshness of Tulperion's earlier light. In a nearby court, water slips from a carved basin into a shallow channel. Its sound is gentle and regular, and no hurried footsteps disturb it. The city moves according to old rhythms. At the center of the Noldorin people stands Finwë, their first king in Valinor. His household is known throughout Tirion, not because it seeks attention, but because the Noldor gather around his authority as around a tall, steady pillar. Finwë is a figure of memory and continuity. He has led his people from the long journey into Aman, and his presence gives shape to their new life beneath the trees. Finwë's eldest son is Fëanor, whose name means spirit of fire. Even in youth, he possesses an intensity unlike the calm character of the age around him. He watches closely, remembers sharply, and learns with unusual speed. Among the Noldor, already devoted to craft, lore, language, and precious objects, Fëanor's gifts appear almost overwhelming. His hands understand materials, while his mind reaches towards forms no one else has imagined. Fëanor's mother is Miriel Serendar, a woman renowned for the skill of her hands and the clarity of her thought. She gives birth to him in Finwë's house beneath the changing light of Valinor. The event should have opened a season of ordinary family happiness. Instead, Miriel's strength fades after the birth, as though bringing her child into the world has drawn away the greater part of her life. You stand near the quiet gardens of Finwë's dwelling while silver light returns over the upper terraces. Tulperion's branches are visible beyond the walls, and the pale glow rests upon the roofs like frost that does not melt. Leaves stir gently in the cool air beneath the silver tree. A servant carries folded cloth through a covered passage, while a distant workshop sends forth the soft ringing of a file against metal. Miriel does not recover. Her spirit grows weary, and she withdraws from the life of the house. In time, her body dies, and she leaves Finwë with a son who has scarcely begun to know the sound of her voice. Among the elves, death is not an ordinary companion in Aman. The loss is therefore strange, heavy, and difficult to place within the ordered peace of Valinor. Fëanor's childhood unfolds beneath that absence. He grows in a household where his mother's name is spoken with tenderness, but where her hands no longer guide his own. Finwë loves him deeply, and the young Fëanor receives affection, instruction, and honor. Yet the first shape of his life contains an unusual loneliness. He is surrounded by a people who remember everything, while the person he most needs to remember has left no years of shared experience behind her. Finwë remains devoted to Miriel for a long time. The halls of his house continue their quiet routines, and Fëanor grows among teachers, craftsmen, historians, and guardians of old songs. The alternation of the two trees marks every season of his early life. Silver passes through the windows, and gold gathers on the floors. The pattern repeats, calm and unbroken, while Miriel's child learns to observe the world with a concentration that never quite relaxes. In time, Finwë marries Indis of the Vanyar. Indis comes from a people closely associated with the light, beauty, and spiritual order of Valinor. Her presence brings new warmth to Finwë's household, though the household does not become simple. Fëanor remains Miriel's son, and his place cannot be replaced. Indis offers care, but the old absence remains at the center of the family. Through Finwë and Indis, Fëanor gains two half-brothers, Fingolfin and Finarfin. Fingolfin is proud, steadfast, and commanding, with a strength that draws others towards him. Finarfin is gentler in manner, thoughtful, and connected through his mother to the Vanyar. The three sons belong to one royal house, yet each carries a different character into the long peace of Valinor. Under Laurelin's gold, the gardens around Finwë's house appear almost touched by summer. The leaves shine at their edges, and pale flowers open among the paths. You feel the warmth across your hands as you pass a low wall. Beyond it, the courtyards of Tirion lie quiet, filled with the fragrance of cut wood and polished stone. A breeze moves through the trees, and the distant sound of tools rises and falls like a slow, careful melody. Fëanor's relationship with his half-brothers is shaped by affection, distance, and rivalry. He is older than Fingolfin and Finarfin, and his position as Finwë's eldest son gives him a special place. Yet his gifts set him apart even from those closest to him. Fingolfin's strength is visible and direct, while Finarfin's wisdom is patient and conciliating. Fëanor's mind moves more quickly, and his desire to create seems to burn with a private heat. The years pass peacefully. Fëanor's childhood and adulthood unfold during the long peace of Valinor, when the Valar appear secure in their power and the Eldar enjoy the fruits of their protection. No army crosses the mountains, and no enemy enters the cities. The memories of Middle-earth grow distant, softened by the brilliance of Aman and the daily abundance of the blessed realm. The Noldor use this peace for study and invention. In their workshops, you find lamps, vessels, woven fabrics, swords, instruments, and jewels whose forms become more intricate with every generation. Their craftsmen compare colors and metals, while their scholars preserve languages. Their singers keep the names of ancient places alive. In Tirion, making and remembering are almost the same act, because every crafted object becomes another vessel for thought. You pass beneath a covered walkway while the light changes once more. The gold of Laurelin fades from the high leaves, and a silver gleam gathers upon the far pavement. The air cools against your face. Within an open workshop, a wheel turns slowly beneath a craftsman's hand. Fine shavings curl beside his feet, while nearby a young Noldo whispers a line of old poetry, testing the shape of each word before writing it down. Fëanor becomes the greatest craftsman among the Noldor. His works are not merely beautiful, they seem to contain a new kind of thought, as though he has found ways for matter to preserve memory more perfectly. He studies light, color, crystal, metal, and the delicate structures of living things. His knowledge grows through observation, but also through a restless inward power that refuses to accept the limits already known. His fame spreads through Tirion and beyond. The Valar take interest in his achievements, while the Noldor admire and fear the strength of his imagination. Fëanor can be generous with his knowledge, but he is not easy to approach. His words are sharp when challenged, and his pride rises quickly when he believes another person has misunderstood him. Even within a peaceful society, creative rivalry begins to gather around his name. Finwë watches his eldest son with pride. He sees the brilliance, dedication, and promise of works that may endure beyond any single lifetime. He also sees the tension between Fëanor and the sons of Indis. The royal household remains outwardly ordered, yet the peace of the realm does not make every heart peaceful. Old grief, new affection, and differing temperaments live together beneath one roof. At this time, Melkor is also present in the life of Valinor. He was originally one of the Valar, mighty spirits who entered the world through the will of Eru Ilúvatar. Yet Melkor rebelled against Eru and the other Valar, seeking to possess the world and shape it according to his own desire. His rebellion brought ruin to many places, and the Valar eventually overcame him. For a period, Melkor was held in captivity. His imprisonment took place within the guarded Order of Valinor, where the Valar hoped that time and restraint might change him. When he was later released, he spoke with apparent repentance. His manner was humble, and his words acknowledged his former pride. He claimed that he wished to repair the harm he had caused and live peacefully among the Valar and the Eldar. The people of Valinor are accustomed to trust. They have dwelt for long ages beneath the two trees, surrounded by powers greater than themselves, and believe that the great danger has passed. Melkor's apparent repentance, therefore, helps him regain access to the society of the Eldar and the Valar. He walks again among those who once opposed him, listens in their halls, observes their works, and learns where their confidence has become soft. The courtyards of Tirion remain peaceful beneath the alternating light. Telperion's silver shines upon the steps, and Laurelin's gold returns to the upper leaves. The fountains murmur, and the workshops continue their patient labor. Yet in the wider order of Valinor, Melkor moves quietly from place to place, gathering knowledge, while the Noldor believe that his imprisonment has ended the old threat. You are near the lower gates of Tirion. A silver light spreads over the road. White stone gleams beneath your feet, and the shadows of the towers lengthen towards the eastern slope. A cool wind passes beneath Telperion's branches, carrying the scent of grass and distant water. A group of elves crosses the square with books beneath their arms, speaking calmly of histories, materials, and the arrangement of a new hall. Melkor is drawn especially towards those who possess great gifts. He speaks with the valor about order and wisdom, but he also takes interest in the Noldor, whose abilities are expressed through invention and remembrance. He understands that pride can be approached through admiration. He praises what is already strong and offers suggestions that appear generous. He plants comparisons gently, allowing others to believe that the thoughts have risen within their own minds. Fëanor's spirit is particularly difficult to quiet. His childhood loneliness has not disappeared with age. The loss of Miriel remains part of him, even when he speaks of craft and knowledge. His love for Finwë is fierce, and his attachment to the works of his own hands is equally intense. Melkor senses the pressure within him, though Fëanor does not yet recognize the source of every disturbance. Fingolfin and Finarfin stand near him in the royal family, each with his own place and influence. The brothers are not enemies by nature. Their differences arise from circumstance, temperament, and the complicated shape of Finwë's household. Fëanor sees the sons of Indis as people who have entered a story that began before them. Fingolfin sees Fëanor's pride as a force that could damage the family, while Finarfin tries to preserve affection among them. The first unease appears not as sudden darkness, but as a slight change in the way familiar things are regarded. A jewel seems to invite comparison, and a word appears to carry an insult. A family gathering becomes quieter when one brother enters. Nothing has yet broken. The light still passes from Tulperion to Lorelin, and the white towers of Tirion still rise above the hill. Yet peace can contain tension without revealing its full shape. In the garden below the city, Lorelin's golden radiance rests upon broad leaves and pale blossoms. The warmth is gentle, never harsh. You hear the faint brushing of branches overhead and the soft movement of robes along a path. A craftsman has left a tray of unfinished pieces beside a bench. Small stones, thin wires, and fragments of colored glass catch the light, waiting without impatience for the hands that will shape them. The Noldor continue their work. Their culture does not turn away from beauty because suspicion has entered a few conversations. They still preserve old languages and teach children the names of distant stars. They carve stories into wood and stone and meet in quiet courtyards where silver light lies across the paving, while golden light warms the leaves. Finwë's household remains at the heart of this life. Finwë, first king of the Noldor in Valinor, carries the dignity of his people and the private burdens of his family. Indis brings the heritage of the Vanyar into the royal house. Fëanor stands as Miriel Serind's son, marked by genius and absence. Fingolfin and Finarfin grow into their own strengths beneath the same changing sky. The society around them believes in continuity. The Valar have called the elves to Aman, and Aman has given them safety, knowledge, and time. The two trees rise at the center of that gift. Their alternating light establishes the measure of every cycle, though it is not a day like those known in Middle-earth. Silver and gold move across Valinor in turns, and each transition seems to promise that the order will continue forever. Yet Melkor's return has altered the meaning of trust. He is no longer confined. His apparent repentance has opened the doors of Valinor, and he now shares the company of those who once thought him defeated. His voice enters the halls of the Valar, and his gaze passes over the workshops of the Noldor. He sees Fëanor's pride, the tensions within Finwë's family, and the confidence of a people who have forgotten how closely danger can stand. You sit beside a low fountain in Tirion as the light begins to diminish. The last gold of Lorelin lingers upon the water, turning each small movement into a narrow ribbon of fire. Gradually, the glow withdraws from the leaves, and shadows gather beneath the arches. Then Tulperion's silver returns, cool and quiet, settling upon the same stones that held the golden radiance a little earlier. There is comfort in the rhythm. The trees wax and wane, their light passing across the land before disappearing and returning. The courtyards become silver, then gold, then silver again. The workshops quiet at the end of their labor, and the Noldor place their tools carefully upon shelves. In the houses of Tirion, lamps are lit though the trees are near, and voices soften as the evening gathers. Fëanor continues to work long after others have left the halls. His hands move among metal, crystal, and colored stones. He studies the brightness of Telperion and Laurelin not as a simple wonder, but as a mystery whose form might someday be understood. The cool air beneath Telperion's branches enters through the open windows. Somewhere in the city, a door closes gently, and somewhere else, a page turns. Finwë sleeps within his house, while Indis rests in her own chamber, and the sons of the royal family follow different paths through the night. Miriel's absence remains part of the household's silence. Fëanor's thoughts remain wakeful, while Fingolfin and Finarfin carry their own impressions of the day. Beyond them, in halls of greater power, Melkor remembers what he has seen. No alarm sounds in Tirion. No shadow crosses the white walls with enough force to be recognized. The old peace is still present, and the beauty of Valinor has not diminished. Yet beneath that peace, rivalries are forming, grief remains unhealed, and a returned enemy has begun to move among the people he once tried to destroy. The city grows still beneath the silver light. Cool air moves beneath Telperion's branches, and the tools are quiet now. In the gardens, the leaves barely stir. Far away, Laurelin waits in darkness for her golden radiance to rise again, while Tirion rests beneath the patient light of the silver tree. Valinor has not diminished. The city grows still beneath the silver light. Cool air moves beneath Telperion's branches, and the tools are quiet now. In the gardens, the leaves barely stir. Beyond the sleeping streets, where the slopes of Tuna descend towards the quiet dwellings of the Noldor, one house remains awake. You are standing before its narrow windows, where a faint glow gathers behind drawn curtains. The air is cool upon your face, carrying the dry scent of stone and the softer fragrance of gardens at night. Somewhere beyond the walls, a fountain gives a measured sound, falling into its basin and beginning again. Within the house, metal touches wood. A small instrument is lifted, set down, and lifted once more, delicate enough to belong to a sleeping bird. This is the house of Fëanor. During the years of the trees, Fëanor became renowned for works of craft unequaled among the Noldor. His hands shaped metal, crystal, stone, and colored glass with a concentration that seemed almost separate from ordinary time. Around him, Valinor remained broad and peaceful, but his attention narrowed towards the exactness of the thing before him. He studied the grain within a jewel, the temper of a blade, the weight of a clasp, and the manner in which one surface received the light of another. You enter the workshop slowly, finding a room quiet enough to hear breathing. The benches are crowded with files, pincers, chisels, small hammers, and shallow dishes, holding fragments of translucent material. Hard crystal catches silver and gold from two lamps placed at opposite corners. Fine metal tools lie against the workbench in careful order, each one resting upon folded cloth. The polished surfaces return the lamplight in softened points, never quite still because the flame moves. Near the center of the room stands a covered object, guarded by silence. Fëanor does not begin with the Silmarils. The three jewels are still hidden within the long patience of his thought, and the substance that will form their shells has not yet been devised. You see him working through many lesser experiments, testing the behavior of crystal beneath pressure, heat, and the slow passage of light. Some pieces fracture with a sound, like a distant thread breaking. Others cloud from within, losing the clarity that he seeks. A few remain beautiful but lifeless, holding brightness without seeming to possess it. At the workbench, the warmth of a jewel held near your palm reaches the skin before the stone itself touches you. The sensation is subtle, neither the heat of a coal nor the chill of ordinary crystal. It seems to come from a depth within the object, as though brightness had gathered there, and remembered the sun. You keep your hand still while Fëanor turns the piece beneath the lamp. Silver travels across one edge, then gold appears beside it. The workshop remains hushed, and the faint rasp of a tool becomes almost as soothing as rain against a roof. Fëanor's labor takes place before Melkor's final attack on the two trees. At that time, the light of Lorelin and Tulperion still rises and falls through Valinor, pouring gold and silver across the hills, halls, and white roads of the blessed realm. Yet Fëanor does not work merely to imitate the radiance around him. He seeks a form that may contain it, preserve it, and hold within its substance a portion of what cannot be made again. You stand near the open doorway while the night changes outside. One tree gives silver, the other gold, and their mingled radiance reaches the workshop in long bands. Dust moves within those bands like slow, suspended stars. The walls carry a faint warmth from the lamps, while the floor remains cool beneath your feet. On a shelf, several unfinished objects wait beneath linen, their shapes concealed, but their weight suggested by the careful sagging of the cloth. Nothing is hurried. Even failure is placed gently aside. The substance Fëanor devised for the shells of the Silmarils was called Silima. Its name would remain bound to the jewels, for the name Silmarils derives from Silima, the crystalline substance associated with their construction. Silima was not an ordinary stone, nor a simple mixture of substances already known among the Noldor. Its precise qualities belonged to Fëanor's private knowledge, and the method by which he brought it into being was known only to him. You watch the pale material gather upon a shallow tray, clear in some places and faintly colored in others. It catches the light without scattering it completely, allowing brightness to move through its body as water moves beneath ice. When Fëanor touches it with a fine instrument, the surface answers with a muted gleam. The tool makes a soft, controlled sound against the crystalline substance. Beyond the walls, leaves shift under a passing breeze, but within the room there is only the quiet workbench, the steady lamps, and the calm rhythm of breathing. No later craftsman succeeded in making gems of comparable beauty or greatness. The knowledge did not pass into a school or become a method that other hands could repeat. The secret remained with Fëanor, as if the substance itself resisted explanation when separated from the mind that had imagined it. The Silmarils would therefore remain singular, not merely because of what they contained, but because no one else could recover the path by which they had been made. You move around the bench, careful not to disturb the arrangement of tools. A small cup holds filings bright as frost. A narrow saw rests beside a block of dark stone. The edges of the work surface are worn smooth by years of leaning hands. Lamplight gathers beneath a ruler, along the curve of a clasp, and inside the hollow of a silver bowl. A jewel lies covered nearby, yet a thin radiance escapes through the fabric and rests upon the wood. The Silmarils were 3 jewels rather than a single stone. Their number mattered, because each one held an entire possibility of light while remaining part of a greater triad. Fëanor shaped them as separate works, though their destinies would become inseparable. Together, they formed a balance of brightness and form that seemed complete without becoming uniform. You find the 3 places prepared upon the bench, each marked by a shallow, circular depression. The spaces are not identical, for each jewel has its own proportions and quiet presence. One reflects the silver lamp in a narrow line. Another receives the golden flame and sends it beneath the surface. The third appears almost colorless until you draw close, when a hidden depth opens within it. Your palm feels warmth from the nearest jewel without your fingers touching the stone. Into the Silmarils, Fëanor placed the light of the 2 trees of Valinor. The jewels did not contain a painted likeness or an ornamented reflection, but a portion of the living radiance that had risen from Lorelin and Tulperion. Their making preserved part of the tree's light at a time when that light could not otherwise be reproduced. What entered the crystalline shells was therefore more than brightness. It was a remnant of a living source, enclosed before its final loss. The light in the workshop changes as you look. Silver from Tulperian rests along the upper surfaces, while gold from Laurelin enters through the sides and returns in softened color. The jewels shine with their own light, yet they also reflect the light around them. Their radiance is both inward and outward, belonging to the substance and responding to the room. A lamp flame trembles within one facet, then disappears when Fëanor turns the jewel by a fraction. The precise method by which Fëanor made the Silmarils was known only to him. Perhaps he measured the substances by weight, perhaps by color, perhaps by a sense of balance that could not be reduced to numbers. You see no written formula resting beside the tools. There is no tablet of instructions, no sequence of signs, and no second figure waiting to learn the process. The work is held entirely within his memory, protected by his silence. Outside, the White City lies beneath the trees in a long, quiet curve. A distant door closes somewhere among the houses, and then the sound fades into the night. Within the workshop, the air carries the faint scent of warm metal and dry stone. The benches retain the marks of former experiments, shallow scratches crossing deeper cuts. A thin ribbon of silver wire has been coiled into a circle, and nearby a golden tool lies warm from use. When the three jewels are complete, admiration moves through the Noldor like light passing across water. Their beauty exceeds comparison, and their fame spreads beyond Fëanor's household into the halls, gardens, and high places of Tirion. The Silmarils become the most renowned of all the works of the elves. People speak of them with wonder, but speech cannot fully describe what the eye perceives. You are standing at the edge of a gathering where the jewels are shown for a brief time. Faces turn towards them, illuminated by a brightness that seems to rise from the center of the stones. Silver and gold mingle across cheeks, hair, and white garments. The air smells of flowers brought in from the gardens, though the jewels themselves give no scent. A murmur passes through the room and settles again, leaving only the faint movement of cloth and the nearly inaudible sound of someone breathing close by. Fëanor receives the admiration, but he does not receive it simply. His creative achievement intensifies his possessiveness and pride. The Silmarils are his work, born from his thought, secrecy, and endurance. They contain the light he alone preserved, and their unmatched beauty seems to confirm the exceptional nature of their maker. You stand beside the doorway while Fëanor covers the jewels once more. The cloth falls across the three forms, and the room becomes dimmer at once. The change is not complete, because a gentle radiance remains around the covered shapes, touching the bench and floor. Fëanor's hand rests upon the covering for a moment. His fingers are still, but the gesture has the finality of a lock turning within a door. The jewels were hallowed by Vada. Because of that hallowing, mortal or evil hands could not touch them without being burned or withered. Their beauty therefore carried a boundary within it, a protection that made them unlike ordinary treasures. The Silmarils could be admired, desired, or pursued, but their touch answered according to the nature of the hand that reached for them. A quiet warmth surrounds the nearest jewel as you draw your palm above it. The air between skin and crystal feels altered, almost weightless. No flame rises, and no sound announces danger, yet the boundary is unmistakable. Silver light moves beneath the covering, while gold rests along the edge of the table. Fine tools remain arranged upon their folded cloths, and the quiet of the workshop deepens around the guarded objects. Fëanor understands that the Silmarils are no longer only works of craft. They have become a place where beauty, memory, and danger meet. Their light belongs partly to the two trees, partly to the substance of Silmaril, and partly to the intention of the Maker who enclosed them. They preserve a vanished possibility even before the trees are destroyed, and this knowledge gives their radiance a solemn weight. You look towards the windows, where the living trees stand beyond the city. Tulperion waits beneath the night, his silver branches quiet against the dark. Laurelin is hidden in the rhythm of her rest, preparing the golden light that will return. The jewels answer both presences upon the bench, holding their brightness in a smaller and more concentrated form. The admiration surrounding Fëanor also changes the space between him and his half-brothers. During the years of the trees, their relationship remains marked by suspicion and rivalry. Old griefs do not vanish because new jewels have been made, and the brilliance of the Silmarils does not soften every memory. Fëanor's greatness becomes another measure by which others are judged, and another source of tension within his house. You cross a courtyard where the stones still hold the warmth of the day. From one side comes the muted sound of voices behind a wall too distant to distinguish into words. On the other, a garden gives off the green scent of leaves cooled by night. The lamps along the path shine upon white steps and polished metal railings. Shadows gather beneath the arches, while the silver light above remains calm and steady. Fingolfin stands apart from Fëanor in the memory of the house, and the distance between them is never merely physical. Their father's love, the inheritance of the Noldor, and the regard of their people all lie within the field of their rivalry. Fëanor's brilliance does not erase Fingolfin's strength, while Fingolfin's stature does not diminish Fëanor's skill. Each fact makes the other more difficult to bear. You feel the coolness of the stone beneath your hand as you pass beneath an archway. The surface is smooth in some places and faintly rough in others, shaped by weather and many years of touch. A low wind moves through the garden, carrying the sound of leaves brushing together. From a high window, lamplight reaches the paving stones and breaks into thin reflections. Fëanor guards the jewels closely after making them. He does not leave them in a public treasury, permit their casual handling, or allow their presence to become ordinary through constant display. The Silmarils remain near him, enclosed within a private order of keys, coverings, locked chambers, and watchful attention. Their fame grows partly because they are seen so rarely. You return to the workshop before dawn. A small latch yields beneath Fëanor's hand, and the door opens onto a room that has kept the night's stillness. The lamps have burned lower. Their reflections lie in the polished tools like tiny moons. On the central bench, the covered jewels give off a soft light through the fabric, and the warmth near them remains. The Silmarils are not simply possessions in Fëanor's mind. They are proof that the light of the two trees can be gathered, carried, and protected by the will of one maker. They are evidence of his power to achieve what no other craftsman has achieved. They are also the most intimate expression of his thought, and therefore something he cannot imagine surrendering. Across the room, you hear the slight movement of a shutter. The air has become warmer, though the floor remains cool. One lamp flickers and casts a trembling line across a silver instrument. A shallow dish holds transparent fragments, each catching the light in a different manner. The smell of heated crystal is faint and clean, mingling with the dry fragrance of linen. In the days that follow, the jewels become part of the ordering of Fëanor's life. He measures his hours around them, considers their safety before his own comfort, and speaks of them with a guarded intensity. The Noldor continue to praise the Silmarils, but praise from others cannot replace the Maker's private sense of ownership. What has been made by his hand appears to belong to his hand alone. You walk through Tirion beneath a pale morning. The white walls receive the first light and return it in broad, quiet surfaces. Along the streets, silver vessels are being washed, doors are being opened, and the scent of bread begins to move from one house to another. The city is peaceful, yet beneath that peace lies an awareness of the three jewels, hidden somewhere behind stone and timber. The name Silmarils passes from mouth to mouth. It carries within it the name Silima, and the sound of that older substance seems to preserve the secret of the making. Those who speak the word may know what the jewels are called, yet none knows the complete path by which Fëanor brought them into being. The name remains public, while the method remains private. In the workshop, the three jewels rest upon dark cloth. Hard crystal catches silver and gold, and each jewel answers the other two with subdued brilliance. The room is quiet enough to hear the small change in Fëanor's breath when he lifts one stone. The warmth of the jewel reaches his palm, and its light travels across his fingers. The fact that no later craftsman succeeds in making gems of comparable beauty or greatness becomes part of the history of the Noldor. Other artists produce exquisite things, and other hands discover new forms, but the Silmarils remain beyond imitation. Their distinction lies not in one quality alone, but in the union of substance, light, memory, and hallowing. You stand beneath a covered balcony while the lamps are extinguished one by one. The last flame burns within a glass vessel, reflected many times in the polished rail. Beyond the balcony, Tulperion's branches shift gently, and silver light gathers along their edges. There is no harsh shadow in the courtyard, only a gradual settling of brightness upon stone. Fëanor's pride grows alongside the fame of the jewels. He does not merely know that he has made something extraordinary. He feels the achievement as a possession that distinguishes him from every other craftsman. The Silmarils preserve a portion of the tree's light, but they also preserve the shape of Fëanor's ambition. Their radiance becomes inseparable from the intensity of the mind that conceived them. You enter a narrower chamber adjoining the main workshop. Here the walls are lined with wooden cases, each holding objects wrapped in soft material. Some are tools of unusual design. Others are studies in glass, wire, and crystal. The air is warmer than in the outer room, and a low bench has been placed close to the lamps. A single jewel rests there beneath a clear cover, shining upon the surrounding surfaces. The hallowing of Varda gives the Silmarils a sanctity that Fëanor does not create, though his pride draws it close to himself. Their light is protected from mortal or evil hands, and the jewels carry a response that cannot be negotiated. Beauty has become guarded by holiness, while holiness has become enclosed within private ownership. Your fingers hover near the clear cover, and warmth rises softly through the air. The jewel shines without flame, filling the chamber with a pale, inward glow. It reflects the lamp above it, yet the reflection seems secondary, as though the jewel would continue shining if the lamp were removed. Along the edge of the cover, a line of gold trembles and settles. The Silmarils become the most renowned works of the elves because they unite several kinds of wonder. They are beautiful to the eye, rare in their material, and filled with the light of the two trees. They are protected by Varda's hallowing, shaped by a process no one else knows, and made at the threshold of a loss that has not yet occurred. Their significance is already larger than their size. You carry the image of the three stones through the quiet streets. Under your feet, the paving stones are smooth from long passage. A cool current slips between the houses and brushes your face. From an upper window, a curtain moves once, revealing a warm room before hiding it again. Somewhere nearby, a metal cup touches a table with a clear, gentle note. Fëanor's half-brothers remain close enough to be present and distant enough to be mistrusted. Their lives intersect in the halls of their father and in the public spaces of the Noldor, yet suspicion continues to mark their meetings. The brilliance of the Silmarils does not reconcile the family. Instead, it gives every old rivalry a new center, an object around which fear and desire may gather. You are beside a long table where several members of the household have paused in conversation. No one speaks loudly. The lamps cast warm pools across the wood, and the metal rims of cups reflect the light. Beyond the walls, the air carries the scent of damp leaves. The tension is quiet, held in glances, hands resting too firmly upon the table, and the careful distance between one chair and another. The work behind the jewels had been slow, almost private, requiring a form of attention that excluded the ordinary movement of the world. Fëanor had listened to the substance, watched the light, and altered the shape of each shell by degrees another eye might not have noticed. The final beauty therefore concealed the long discipline beneath it. Within the workshop, You hear the gentle scrape of a tool being drawn across hard crystal. The sound is steady and fine, neither harsh nor hurried. A small flame bends above its wick, placing a golden reflection upon a polished plate. Dust has settled in the corners, and the scent of stone remains in the air. The central bench is marked by years of careful use. Fëanor keeps the jewels near because they cannot be replaced. No other hand will restore the precise union of Silmarils and the tree's light. Their value is therefore not merely measured by rarity. They are irreplaceable in the deepest sense, because the conditions of their making belong to a single moment and a single mind. You look towards the locked cabinet where the jewels are kept when they are not displayed. The wood is dark, smooth, and strengthened by narrow bands of metal. A small key hangs beneath Fëanor's garment. Near the cabinet, the air feels warmer than elsewhere, though no lamp stands there. Faint light beneath the door reaches across the floor and stops at the threshold. The final attack on the two trees has not yet come. Laurelin still sends gold through the hours, until Tulperion still lifts silver into the night. The Silmarils have been made before that attack, while the trees continue to live, but their existence already preserves a portion of what may one day vanish. Fëanor has gathered the possibility of loss into objects of incomparable beauty. You stand upon a terrace overlooking Valinor. The distant hills are softened by silver, while the highest clouds retain a faint color from Laurelin's earlier radiance. The night air moves slowly around the parapet. Stone cooled beneath the stars touches your hand, and a far-off fountain marks the silence with its patient falling. The world seems whole, yet the three jewels suggest that wholeness can be enclosed and guarded. Fëanor does not know every consequence of what he has made. He knows the jewels, their substance, their light, and the labor that brought them into being. He knows the pride that rises when the Noldor gaze upon them. He knows, too, that the light within them is drawn from the two trees, whose living brightness remains beyond later imitation. The workshop has grown still again. Silver light lies across the white stone outside, and a softer glow rests beneath the door. Fine metal tools sleep upon the workbench. Hard crystal catches silver and gold in small, patient fragments. The last lamp burns beside a polished surface, where its reflection trembles like a distant star. Admiration has become guarded ownership. The Noldor praise the Silmarils, but Fëanor places them beyond ordinary reach. Their fame moves outward through Valinor, while their physical presence moves inward, into locked rooms and private chambers. The more widely they are celebrated, the more closely he keeps them. You are standing before the cabinet at the hour when the city begins to sleep. The key turns softly. The door opens a narrow distance, and light enters the room without sound. Three jewels rest upon dark cloth, each shining with its own radiance and reflecting the surrounding lamps. Their warmth reaches your palm when you hold your hand near the opening. The Silmarils remain three jewels, not one stone, and each preserves the light of the two trees in a separate crystalline body. Their name recalls Silmaril, the substance devised by Fëanor for their shells. Their making is known only to him, their beauty has no successor, and their hallowing by Varda gives them a danger belonging to holiness as much as to flame. You remain in the doorway while the jewels shine upon the quiet chamber. Beyond the walls, Tulperion waits beneath his branches, and Laurelin prepares to rise again in her appointed hour. The lamps burn low. Polished metal returns their light. The bench holds its fine tools, and the room is quiet enough to hear breathing. Fëanor has made something no one else can replace. The thought rests within the workshop like a final note that does not need to be repeated. It belongs to the three jewels, to the light of Laurelin and Tulperion, to the secret of Silmaril, and to the hands that shaped them. It also belongs to the pride that now surrounds the work, quiet enough to seem like devotion and strong enough to become possession. Outside, Valinor remains peaceful beneath the years of the trees. The white roads are empty. Silver rests upon the stones. Golden light waits beyond the dark horizon. The leaves barely stir, and the tools remain quiet. Within the locked chamber, the Silmarils continue to shine. You stand before the sealed chamber where Fëanor keeps the Silmarils, and their light gathers upon the stone like a quiet presence. Each jewel holds the blended radiance of Telperion and Laurelin, the two trees created by Yavanna to illuminate Valinor. That brightness remains within them, though the trees themselves have been destroyed, and the memory of their light has become almost unbearable. Around you, the halls of Tirion grow still whenever the jewels are mentioned, as though every conversation bends towards their hidden brilliance. Fëanor keeps the Silmarils as objects of unique value, guarded with the care given to things that cannot be replaced. You imagine the treasury beneath the hills, the cool passages descending into silence, and the heavy metal doors fitted closely within the rock. Beyond them, lamps burn without purpose, because the polished gleam of the three jewels would make every lesser flame seem pale. The air carries the faint scent of oil, iron, and stone warmed by ancient light. Far above, wind moves through the empty streets of Tirion, passing beneath archways and along white walls. A sentry pauses beside the guarded house, and distant footsteps fade slowly into the quiet. The Silmarils remain at the center of Valinorian attention, still and radiant, while the minds surrounding them begin to shift. Melkor desires them because they contain the light he could not create, and his longing has never been simple admiration. Within that desire lies hatred of the Valar, who have ordered the blessed realm without granting him mastery over it. There is envy of Fëanor as well, because the Noldorin craftsman has brought into being what Melkor could only covet. You see the darkness of that wish moving beneath courteous words, lowered eyes, and the calm expressions of those who trust him. Melkor has learned to approach beauty as though he were paying tribute, while silently measuring the strength of every wall around it. The two trees once illuminated Valinor with alternating silver and gold, filling the land with a living rhythm of brightness. Yavanna created them, and their light seemed to belong to the world itself rather than to any single hand. Now that light survives in three small forms, enclosed by Fëanor's craft and held within the clarity of Silmaril. The jewels possess no warmth that can be felt upon the skin, yet their radiance seems to reach inward. It touches memory before sight, awakening the sense of something lost without allowing grief to become loud. At night, the passages near the treasury are colder than the surrounding rooms, as if the stones remember the darkness beyond Valinor. You hear the measured tread of guardians crossing the corridor, followed by the soft settling of a barred door. Dust rests upon the upper ledges, undisturbed by any breeze, while a narrow line of light lies beneath the threshold. Fëanor's possession appears secure, yet Melkor has already begun searching for the weakness that no lock can entirely conceal. The Valar once believed that Melkor's repentance might be genuine because he spoke with restraint and accepted the appearance of correction. They eventually learn that his remorse is false and that his quiet manner has merely given him time to study Valinor. While moving among the Noldor, Melkor begins spreading lies with the patience of someone placing stones beneath deep water. He does not accuse openly, for a direct charge can be tested, while a suggestion may remain suspended within the mind. You hear one household remark that Fëanor has grown too proud, and another wonder whether Fingolfin seeks authority beyond his proper place. A third voice recalls some old disagreement, adding a detail that was never present when the event first occurred. Melkor allows each listener to complete the tale, so that suspicion seems to arise from personal judgment rather than from his influence. The white avenues of Tirion carry these murmurs from courtyard to courtyard, and the city begins to feel less unified than before. Cold air moves between the towers, stirring loose banners and lifting small papers from the edges of public steps. The wind passes through gardens, where the leaves of silver trees tremble faintly against the darkening sky. In a side street, a door closes, then another answers it farther away. You walk beneath the long shadows of the houses, hearing fragments of speech dissolve before their meaning becomes complete. At the edge of the square, a guarded residence stands with its windows covered and its threshold swept clean. Distant footsteps approach, hesitate, and continue past without revealing who has made them. The city remains beautiful, but beauty no longer feels sufficient to keep unease outside. Fëanor and Fingolfin are brothers, both descended from Finwë, and their closeness has never been free from rivalry. Fëanor possesses an intensity that makes every insult seem deliberate, while Fingolfin carries himself with steadier confidence. Melkor places his lies between them, widening small resentments until each man begins to interpret the other's silence as intention. He encourages suspicion between Fëanor, Fingolfin, and their followers, allowing private loyalties to become public divisions. Fëanor's anger towards Fingolfin is especially useful, because anger already possesses a shape into which false information can easily fit. You watch the quarrel gather weight through repeated telling, with each retelling turning a family disagreement into a question of power. The Noldor begin to interpret internal conflict as evidence of wider political betrayal, and the thought spreads more quickly than any correction. Some fear that Fingolfin wishes to dominate Tirion, while others believe Fëanor intends to exclude every rival from influence. Neither suspicion is allowed to rest long enough for the truth to become plain. The streets of Tirion seem broader when you cross them alone, and the distance between one tower and another feels strangely deliberate. Wind travels through the empty roadways, bending the grass beside the paving stones. At a shuttered window, lamplight trembles against a curtain before disappearing. The stone beneath your feet holds the faint coolness of evening, though the years of the trees have not yet ended. From behind a wall comes the scrape of a chair, followed by careful voices speaking too softly to understand. Near the guarded house, someone walks past twice, their steps measured and unhurried. Silence settles over Tirion in layers, leaving each household to imagine what may be happening beyond its own door. The Valar summon Fëanor after he draws a sword against Fingolfin, and the summons carries the gravity of judgment. You see him enter the place of hearing with his pride intact, though his anger has not diminished. He does not believe that the quarrel belongs only to him, because Melkor's misinformation has made the dispute appear part of a broader design. The Valar examine the event, tracing words and movements back towards their source, while Fëanor stands beneath their attention. His hand has raised the sword, and the fact cannot be softened by the motives that preceded it. For the Valar, the danger lies not only in one violent gesture, but in the distrust now moving through the Noldor. They decide that Fëanor must be removed from Tirion, and they banish him for 12 years of the trees. The judgment is precise, measured against the long periods by which Valinor understands time. It is punishment, yet it also becomes a new stage upon which Melkor's designs may continue. In the Chamber of Judgment, pale light rests along the floor and climbs the pillars without warmth. The doors are tall, made of wood strengthened with bands of dark metal. When they close behind Fëanor, the hinges release a low sound that remains in the air for several moments. Outside, wind crosses the upper terraces and carries the smell of green leaves from distant gardens. The streets below have emptied, leaving only the occasional movement of a lone figure beneath the trees. A pair of guards stand beside the entrance, their spears motionless as the light changes around them. You hear footsteps descending the steps, then the quiet exchange of a few words. The summons has ended, but the unease it reveals remains in every corridor and household beyond the doors. Finwë chooses to accompany Fëanor into exile, and the decision gives the sentence a different kind of weight. The king could remain in Tirion, surrounded by the authority of his house, yet he refuses to leave his son alone. You follow them from the city towards Forminos, where the hills rise beyond the settled roads of Valinor. Fëanor carries punishment upon his shoulders, while the Silmarils travel with him as the guarded center of his possessions. The jewels are kept at Fëanor during his exile, removed from the ordinary reach of the city and placed within a fortress of stone. Finwë's presence makes the distant house less like a prison, though the banishment still marks every path leading back to Tirion. Melkor's lies continue to move behind them, carried by those who believe they are only reporting what they have heard. The Noldor watch the departure with divided feelings, unable to decide whether the exile proves guilt or confirms persecution. Fëanor stands among hills where the wind has fewer walls to break against, and the silence there feels wider. Grass bends in long patterns across the slopes, revealing each passing current before the air becomes still again. The road beneath you is pale with dust, and small stones shift beneath the hooves and wheels of the departing company. Behind, Tirion recedes into a softened outline, its towers pale beneath the distant light of the trees. Ahead, the hills gather around Fëanor, enclosing the house in folds of shadow and silver. At dusk, the first stars appear above the ridges, though the land remains faintly illuminated by the western glow. A guard closes the outer gate, and the metal responds with a deep resonance that travels through the walls. Inside, footsteps cross the courtyard, then fade beneath the covered passages. The house receives its exiles without welcome or hostility, holding them in the quiet manner of stone. Fëanor establishes the Silmarils within a sealed treasury in the hills of Fëanor, where their radiance can be protected. The chamber is cut into the rock, and its narrow entrance is defended by doors of iron and layered metal. You stand nearby as the jewels are carried inward, each one resting upon a dark support prepared for its weight. Their light falls upon the faces of Fëanor, Finwë, and the guards, making every expression appear solemn. Fëanor does not treat the Silmarils as ornaments, nor as objects to be displayed whenever the household wishes. He believes their safety depends upon distance, secrecy, and unbroken vigilance. The treasury becomes the still center of Fëanor, with all other rooms arranged around its hidden purpose. Metal doors close in a quiet corridor, one after another, until the jewels are enclosed beneath the hillside. No voice rises within the chamber after the final bar is placed. Cold stone surrounds the treasury, and the polished gleam of the three jewels remains steady in the darkness. The air near the entrance tastes faintly of dust and metal, with a dry mineral scent lingering along the floor. A narrow passage bends away from the chamber, its walls marked by the dull shine of tools used during construction. The guards move slowly, preserving the silence as though sound itself might travel through the sealed doors. Outside, wind presses against the hill and slips along the foundations of the house. A watchman hears distant footsteps beyond the courtyard, but no visitor appears beneath the lamps. Fëanor holds the jewels securely, though secrecy cannot conceal the attention already turned towards them. Melkor later visits Fëanor, arriving with the appearance of a traveler who has come to speak without hostility. You see him approach beneath the hills, his manner composed and his garments carrying no visible sign of conflict. He offers courtesy to Fëanor, and his words are shaped with care, as though he wishes to leave the past behind. The Valar have learned that his apparent repentance was false, but only after he has moved freely among the Noldor. Melkor's politeness conceals calculation, and his questions soon turn towards the treasury beneath the house. He asks Fëanor for the Silmarils, speaking as though the request were part of an ordinary settlement between powerful people. Perhaps he presents the jewels as something that should be shared, or suggests that their light belongs to all who remember the trees. Fëanor hears the claim beneath the courtesy and refuses to surrender them. His answer is firm, because he knows that Melkor desires the light he could not create. The request has exposed the visitor's purpose, and the air within Fëanor becomes suddenly more guarded. Rain has begun over the hills, falling in a thin veil that darkens the stones around the house. Water gathers along the steps, and moves through narrow channels cut into the courtyard. Melkor's cloak sheds the drops without sound as he passes beneath the covered way. A lamp burns beside the treasury entrance, its small flame wavering whenever the wind finds a gap in the masonry. The metal doors remain closed, reflecting a narrow strip of gold from the light above them. Inside the house, someone places a cup upon a table, and the porcelain makes a quiet click. From beyond the outer wall comes the soft rhythm of approaching footsteps, followed by a pause near the gate. No one speaks loudly enough for the rain to carry the words. The jewels remain below the hill, while the visitor waits with the patience of a thought that has not yet found its moment. Fëanor's refusal leaves Melkor without the Silmarils, but it does not lessen the desire that brought him there. You see the anger pass across his face only briefly, covered again by the controlled expression he has chosen. He does not threaten Fëanor in the chamber, because open violence would reveal too much and bring the Valar against him. Instead, he withdraws with courtesy, allowing the refusal to resemble a personal insult rather than a defense against theft. Fëanor understands the danger, though understanding cannot erase the wound to his pride. Finwë watches the departure from Forminos, aware that the house has become a target because of what it contains. The Silmarils are locked away, yet their radiance has drawn the darkness nearer to the family that guards them. Melkor moves beyond the hills, carrying his failure into the wider lands of Valinor. His immediate purpose has changed, but the hatred of the Valar and the envy of Fëanor remain joined within him. The rain thins along the mountain paths, leaving the grass heavy and the stones dark. Mist rises from the lower valleys, drifting around the foundations of Forminos without entering the guarded passages. A latch settles into place, and the sound moves through the house like a small confirmation of danger. The treasury door stands beneath the hillside, marked only by its hinges and the faint line where metal meets stone. No light escapes now except a pale glimmer beneath the innermost threshold. Outside, the wind changes direction and carries the scent of wet earth through the courtyard. A distant figure passes beyond the gate, visible for an instant before the mist hides it. The guards remain at their stations, listening to the empty road and the slow breathing of the house. Melkor has gone elsewhere, but the silence at Forminos has acquired the quality of waiting. The wider crisis does not end with Fëanor's exile, because suspicion has already become part of the Noldor's understanding. You hear people in Tirion speak of betrayal as though it were concealed behind every family decision. Fëanor's quarrel with Fingolfin is remembered less as a single angry encounter than as proof of hidden political ambition. Followers begin to judge one another according to old allegiance, and ordinary differences acquire a larger significance. The Noldor no longer share one interpretation of events, and the absence of certainty allows every rumor to survive. Some defend Fëanor because his anger seems honest, while others distrust him because honesty has not prevented violence. Others turn towards Fingolfin, believing that stability must be protected from the temper of a single craftsman. The Valar's judgment is discussed in houses where the speakers do not know all that led to it. In the distance, Forminos remains closed, its treasury holding the light that has become inseparable from fear. Evening settles over Tirion, and the paving stones receive a thin veil of silver. Wind slips along the empty streets, entering archways and stirring the pale dust beneath the doors. A curtain moves in an upper room, then falls still when the air loses its strength. The gardens are quiet, with leaves brushing softly against one another above the dark soil. Far away, a bell sounds once, and the note travels through the city before dissolving among the towers. You pass a house where two people are speaking behind a closed shutter, their voices reduced to a low murmur. Outside another dwelling, a guard shifts his weight and rests both hands upon his staff. Distant footsteps cross the road, drawing nearer then veering away towards the northern gate. The city's beauty remains untouched, yet the old confidence has become difficult to recover. In Forminos, the Silmarils rest beneath metal and stone, while every rumor continues moving through the world above them. You return in thought to the sealed treasury, where the three jewels shine without flame, smoke, or sound. Their light comes from Telperion and Laurelin, whose radiance once flowed across Valinor beneath Yavanna's care. The trees are gone, and the jewels alone preserve what Melkor could neither make nor endure. Fëanor has refused to surrender them, guarding his work with a devotion that has become indistinguishable from possessiveness. Finwë remains with him in exile, and the house in the hills holds both father and son within its guarded quiet. The metal doors close in the corridor, and the echo is so soft that it seems absorbed by the rock. Outside, the wind moves over Forminos, traveling down the slopes and around the empty walls. A sentry hears distant footsteps beyond the guarded house, but no visitor crosses the lighted ground. The Silmarils remain locked away, their polished gleam continuing through the darkness. Melkor has moved elsewhere, carrying his hatred beyond the treasury and towards a danger not yet revealed. You stand beneath the last quiet stars of Aman, while the years of the trees draw towards their final and shadowed turning. The radiance of Valinor still passes between the hills, though its brightness now feels delicate beside the darker purpose gathering in the south. Melkor has sought the aid of Ungoliant, a great spider-like being who dwells in the southern lands of Aman. Her hunger has grown through isolation, and Melkor promises her whatever she desires in exchange for her help. Between them, beneath the silent heavens, an agreement forms around light, envy, and destruction. The southern country lies far from the shining courts of the Valar, where the slopes descend into lonely valleys and heavy woods. A pale gleam rests upon the leaves, but it does not reach beneath the branches, where black vapor gathers in slow folds. The air carries the damp scent of moss, old bark, and distant water moving over stone. No birdsong rises from the thickets, and its absence makes the quiet seem deeper than ordinary night. Across the darkening ground, Ungoliant moves without haste, her many limbs pressing softly into the earth. You follow the southern roads of Aman as Melkor and Ungoliant begin their journey northward, keeping away from watchful eyes and familiar paths. Melkor travels beneath a cloak of secrecy, while Ungoliant hides her immense shape within a cloud of darkness that feeds upon the surrounding light. Their approach remains unnoticed, for the Valar and the elves are unprepared for an assault upon the trees. The festivals, labors, and private concerns of Valinor continue beneath the radiance of the two trees. Far from those peaceful places, the promise between Melkor and Ungoliant grows heavier with every silent mile. The hills of the south retain a faint warmth from the lingering light, though the shadows beneath the rocks have become unusually cold. Dark vapor drifts over hollows and gathers around the roots of ancient trees. It dulls the edges of leaves, swallows the glimmer of streams, and leaves the air thick against your face. Even the stones seem to lose their color as the darkness passes over them. You hear only the faint rubbing of branches and the soft movement of something vast beyond the nearest rise. Melkor knows that the guardians of Valinor are distant from the place where the trees stand, and he chooses the moment with care. Ungoliant follows him across the northern approaches, concealed within the shadow she has woven around herself. The two companions reach the shining land, while the Valar and elves remain unprepared, their attention directed towards other matters beneath the peaceful light. The bright avenues lie open before them, and no alarm travels quickly enough through the halls. At last, Melkor and Ungoliant enter the presence of the trees. You stand beneath the branches of Telperion and Laurelin, where silver and gold have long mingled upon the grass. The light rises and falls in its familiar rhythm, touching every blade with changing color. Then the brightness weakens at the edges, as though a veil has been drawn between the trees and the world. The air becomes colder, and a bitter smell begins to spread beneath the sweetness of leaves and flowers. You hear the first rustle of disturbed branches, followed by a stillness so complete that the absence of birdsong becomes almost tangible. Ungoliant envelops the two trees with her vast body and draws the light towards herself. She drinks the sap that flows within them, taking from Tulperian and Laurelin the brightness gathered through countless years. Melkor strikes the trees with his weapon, piercing their trunks and opening deep wounds beneath the bark. His blows poison them, and the corruption passes into their living substance. The radiance that once sustained Valinor pours outward in pale streams, while Ungoliant drinks the light flowing from the wounded trees. The ground beneath your feet remains familiar, yet everything above it has become uncertain. Silver branches fade into shapeless outlines, and golden leaves fall without gleaming as they touch the earth. The bitterness of poisoned sap settles in your throat, mingling with the smell of bruised bark and cooling soil. A slow wind crosses the hill, but it carries no warmth from the trees. Around you, darkness thickens until distance disappears, and the cold over the hills of Valinor feels like a substance that can be entered. The destruction of the two trees occurs in year 1495 of the years of the trees, according to the chronology preserved in the Annals of Aman. That year marks the end of Valinor's principal light and the beginning of its darkening. The loss is not merely the fading of a familiar brightness, but the breaking of an order that has shaped the lives of the Valar and the elves. Melkor has poisoned the trees, and Ungoliant has consumed their radiance. Together, these acts leave the Holy Land wounded, silent, and dark. Across the empty slopes, the last remnants of light withdraw into the wounded trunks. The silver glow becomes a thin shimmer upon the ground, while the gold sinks into the bark like warmth leaving a cooling hearth. Vapor coils among the roots, carrying the bitter smell of poisoned sap into the valleys. There is no bright horizon now, and no clear distinction remains between the underside of a cloud and the sky beyond it. You hear the faint creaking of dead wood, then only the slow movement of air over the hills. You return with the Valar to the place of the trees, where their branches hang lifeless and their roots lie darkened in the soil. Yavanna is asked whether the trees can be restored, and her answer rests upon the nature of the light they once bore. She says that restoration requires the light preserved in the Silmarils, the three jewels made by Fëanor from the radiance of Tulperian and Laurelin. Within those jewels, the light remains whole, undivided, and untouched by the corruption that has destroyed the living trees. The fate of Valinor therefore turns towards Forminos. The paths leading from the trees are dim beneath a sky without the familiar rhythm of silver and gold. Pale ash lies upon the grass, settling between the roots and along the edges of the stone steps. The air has lost its former warmth, and each breath feels narrow beneath the weight of the vapor. Around you, the leaves no longer shine, though their shapes remain visible in the weak starlight. A faint metallic taste lingers upon your tongue, while the distant hills recede into a darkness older than the night. At Forminos, you stand before Fëanor while the Valar make their request for the Silmarils. The three jewels rest within the stronghold, carrying the only light that remains whole after the destruction of the trees. Fëanor refuses to surrender them, believing that giving up the Silmarils would destroy the only works in which that light survives unbroken. His refusal is spoken in grief, suspicion, and possessive love, while the darkness over Valinor continues to deepen beyond the walls. The future of the world appears to rest upon three jewels he will not release. The chamber at Forminos holds the dry smell of stone, iron fittings, and dust gathered in the corners. Beyond the narrow openings, the night presses against the walls without revealing its depth. A small lamp trembles beside the guarded doors, casting a weak circle across the floor. You feel the cold entering through the masonry, despite the enclosed room and the careful watch. Somewhere beyond the fortress, dark vapor passes beneath the stars, and the silence carries no wings, songs, or answering calls from the hills. While the Valar speak with Fëanor, Melkor and Ungoliant travel north after the attack upon the trees. Their road passes through darkness that grows denser behind them, while the southern lands fade into a distance without landmarks. Ungoliant has drunk deeply of the light, yet a hunger remains, and Melkor understands that her desire can be turned towards further violence. Together, they approach Forminos, where Finwë guards the house and the Silmarils remain hidden from the wounded land. The old king stands between the jewels and the enemy. The ground around Forminos is hard beneath a coating of frost, and the wind slips along the walls with a dry, whispering sound. Weak starlight touches the iron-bound doors, leaving their surfaces dull and colorless. No fire burns brightly enough to soften the darkness beyond the courtyard. The scent of ash drifts from distant slopes, mixed with the bitter residue carried from the dead trees. You stand within the guarded enclosure, hearing only the measured movement of a sentry and the faint pressure of something approaching through the night. Melkor reaches Forminos and kills Finwë, who refuses to abandon the house or yield the treasures entrusted to him. The death takes place within the stronghold, where the halls that once protected the Silmarils become a place of violence and mourning. Melkor then takes the 3 Silmarils from Forminos, carrying them away from the people who made and guarded them. His path turns again towards the north, and Ungoliant follows with a hunger sharpened by the light she has already consumed. The theft leaves Fëanor bereft of his father, his jewels, and the last unbroken radiance of the trees. The interior of Forminos grows strangely vast after Finwë falls silent. Cold air moves through the passageways, touching the stone with a damp and lifeless chill. A lamp burns near an empty doorway, its oil giving off a faint, bitter odor beneath the smell of iron. The polished surfaces of the chamber reflect almost nothing now, and the absence of light seems to gather in every corner. You hear distant footsteps withdrawing across the courtyard, followed by the slow closing of a door and the long stillness beyond it. Fëanor stands before the Valar again, carrying grief that has become inseparable from the fate of the world. The request for the Silmarils remains before him, because Yavanna has said that their light may restore the trees. Yet the jewels have now been taken by Melkor after Finwë's death at Forminos, and their loss has changed the question into one of vengeance. Fëanor's refusal has already denied the Valar the means of healing, while Melkor carries the jewels northward. Around that decision, sorrow, anger, and darkness begin to gather. The road to the north descends through fields where the old brightness has entirely vanished. Frost clings to the grass, and the stones beneath it feel sharp through the soles of your feet. Thin smoke moves between the ridges, folding around tree trunks and rising towards the black sky. The bitter smell of poisoned sap has traveled far from the 2 trees, mingling with ash and the scent of cold earth. You pass beneath branches stripped of their shine, while the silence is broken only by wind moving through dead leaves. Melkor reaches his fortress of Angband and sets the 3 Silmarils in an iron crown. The jewels burn against the dark metal, preserving the light of Telperion and Laurelin within a shape made for possession and dominion. Their radiance does not comfort the halls of Angband, surrounded as it is by iron, ash, and smoke. Melkor bears the crown as a sign of his triumph, while the jewels remain painful to him and terrible to all who remember their making. Far away, Valinor remains beneath the darkening that began in year 1495. Around Angband, the air is heavy with soot, and the cold ground trembles faintly beneath hidden furnaces. Iron plates line the gates, darkened by smoke and marked with old heat. Ash settles upon the outer paths in fine grey layers, softening each footprint before the wind carries it away. Within the fortress, metal groans as doors shift upon their hinges, and a low furnace breath moves through unseen passages. You smell iron, ash, and smoke around Angband, while a narrow glimmer escapes from the crown and disappears into the surrounding dark. Ungoliant waits for the fulfillment of Melkor's promise, having accepted his offer of whatever she desired in exchange for her aid. She has consumed the light of the wounded trees, but the three Silmarils now appear to her as a greater nourishment. Melkor has kept the jewels for himself, and the agreement between the two enemies begins to strain beneath her growing appetite. In the darkness of the north, their alliance becomes unstable, because hunger does not honor promises once stronger objects of desire have appeared. The jewels shine within the iron crown. The passageways of Angband are close and oppressive, with walls that sweat beneath the pressure of heat below. Dark vapor gathers in the vaulted spaces, turning torchlight into blurred orange stains upon the stone. Smoke drifts along the ceiling and settles in the folds of every hanging cloth. The air tastes of metal, bitter resin, and old ash, while distant machinery gives a slow, uneven clatter. You move through the fortress beneath a darkness that has weight, and the faint light of the Silmarils seems almost painful against it. The destruction of the trees has left Valinor without its principal light, and the Valar now face a world altered beyond easy restoration. Yavanna has named the Silmarils as the only vessels in which the light remains whole, but Fëanor's refusal prevented their use even before Melkor stole them. Finwë's death at Forminos has bound the theft to personal grief, while the crown of Angband turns the jewels into emblems of tyranny. The names endure through the darkness: Fëanor, Finwë, Forminos, Melkor, Ungoliant, and Angband. Over Valinor, the night lies upon the hills without the softness of ordinary evening. The valleys are filled with a dim blue-black haze, and the stars appear remote behind drifting vapor. The old paths remain beneath your feet, though their edges cannot be distinguished from the surrounding ground. A faint wind passes over the empty gardens, carrying the scent of cold stone and the bitter trace of sap. Far away, no bird-song answers from the trees, and the silence seems to preserve the shape of the lost light. The Valar mourn the two trees, while Fëanor mourns Finwë and the stolen Silmarils, and Melkor carries his victory into the iron depths of Angband. The destruction in year 1495 has become a turning point in the history of Aman, dividing the years of the trees into brightness and darkness. The trees lie dead. Yavanna's hope depends upon jewels beyond reach, and Fëanor's refusal continues to echo through every consequence. Beneath the stars, Valinor remains cold, and the future gathers beyond the visible road. The hills are quiet now, though their darkness no longer resembles the calm that followed the closing doors at Forminos. Vapor passes slowly over ridges and hollows without sound. Ash rests upon the grass, and a thin crust of frost shines where the last faint gleam reaches it. You feel the cold over the hills of Valinor settle around your shoulders like a heavy cloak. Somewhere northward, iron, ash, and smoke surround Angband, where three lights burn within a crown. Fëanor's decision remains before the Valar, severe and immovable, with the fate of restoration placed upon three jewels he will not surrender. His argument has been preserved in the darkness. Giving up the Silmarils would destroy the only works in which the light remains whole. Melkor has taken those jewels from Forminos, and Ungoliant has followed him north with desire, still unsatisfied. The dead trees wait in their silence, while the darkening of Valinor extends across the land. No bright answer rises from the hills. Beneath the dim sky, the empty roads lose themselves among the sleeping fields. You hear a distant branch break, then the hush that follows seems deeper than before. Cold air moves over the ground, carrying faint smoke from the north and a trace of poisoned sap from the south. The scent of ash remains upon the wind, though its source lies far beyond the valleys. Above you, the stars hold their places without warmth, and beneath them the darkness of Aman continues, patient and almost still. At Angband, Melkor wears the iron crown, and the Silmarils preserve their light within the darkness he has chosen. At Forminos, Finwë's death remains upon the stones, and the empty chambers hold the memory of the theft. At the place of the trees, the branches are dead, while Yavanna's question waits without an answer. Across Valinor, year 1495 is remembered as the year when its principal light ended. The darkening has begun, and the quiet world moves towards its next sorrow. The wind passes over the hills with less force, thinning the vapor for a moment before allowing it to gather again. A dull sheen lies upon the stones, though it comes from the stars rather than any living flame. The ground is cold, the grasses are wet, and the air carries iron from the north and leaf mold from the silent groves. You remain among these altered places, where every familiar path has become dim. Beyond the darkness, the three Silmarils continue to shine within Angband. The darkness above Tirion has lost the order it once possessed, and you enter the city beneath a sky that seems to have forgotten the shape of peace. The white towers rise around you without their accustomed brilliance, while the streets hold a stillness broken only by hurried footsteps. In the great square, torches burn along the edges of the gathering place, their flames leaning beneath a restless wind. Fëanor stands among the Noldor with his face turned towards the darkened heavens. His garments are marked by travel, and grief lies heavily upon him, although his posture remains straight and commanding. Around you, voices carry across the white walls, passing from balcony to balcony like fragments of a troubled dream. The name of Finwë moves through the crowd in quiet tones. Beyond the city, the road descends towards the western coast. You can feel the altered air against your face as you stand beneath the black sky above Tirion. It is not merely the absence of the trees, but a deeper change in the world surrounding you. Torchlight trembles upon carved pillars, and small pools of gold gather on the pale paving stones. Between those pools, darkness appears almost liquid, folding around the feet of the assembled people. Cloaks brush against one another with a soft, papery sound, while distant doors open and close within the houses of the hill. The stone beneath you retains the chill of the long night, and the scent of ash drifts faintly from the western heights. Somewhere nearby, a metal clasp strikes against a shield, followed by the scrape of weapons being gathered. Every sound seems unusually clear in the silence, as though Tirion itself has become a listening vessel. Fëanor has returned to Tirion after the darkening of Valinor, and the news he carries has already passed among the people before his arrival. Melkor has killed Finwë, the first king of the Noldor, and stolen the Silmarils from their guarded treasury. You watch Fëanor absorb these two wounds as though they were one injury, joined together by blood and fire. Finwë was his father, while the jewels were the work of his hands, and each loss seems to demand an answer from the other. His grief does not soften his voice when he begins to speak. Instead, sorrow gives his words a weight that silence cannot resist. He names Melkor by another name, and the sound travels beneath the torches. From that hour, you hear him call Melkor Morgoth, the Black Enemy, a title shaped by hatred and sorrow. The torch flames brighten the faces around you in irregular intervals, revealing tears upon some cheeks and stern attention upon others. Fëanor's shadow stretches across the paving, long and narrow, reaching towards the dim steps that lead down from the square. The white walls receive every word and return it with a softened echo. Near the edge of the gathering, hands close around spear shafts, while leather creaks beneath the movement of arms. A child is lifted briefly above the crowd, then carried away into a sheltered doorway. The western wind enters the city through its open streets, bringing the smell of salt, damp earth, and distant rain. It moves through your hair and under your cloak, and the torches respond with slender bends of orange light. The black sky remains unmoved above Tirion. When Fëanor speaks of Finwë, you hear the truth of the murdered king's death, and no invention is needed to deepen that sorrow. When he speaks of the Silmarils, his words become harder, because the jewels are not only treasures, but the brightest evidence of his creative power. He tells the Noldor that Morgoth has taken what belongs to them and that the stolen light must be recovered. You hear the recovery of the Silmarils presented as a reason to leave Aman, even though the land beyond the mountains is unknown and dangerous. Fëanor also declares that the Valar have restricted the freedom of the Noldor. He speaks of guardians who have become rulers and of a people kept in safety until safety has begun to resemble imprisonment. The speech contains genuine longing, and that longing gives the inherited lies their strength. The great square grows denser as more Noldor arrive from the streets of Tirion. Some carry lamps shielded by their hands, while others come armed beneath travelling cloaks. Torchlight falls upon silver ornaments, polished buckles, and the pale grain of carved wooden bows. Above the houses, the black sky presses down without stars, and the familiar outlines of the city are reduced to sharp edges. Voices pass over your shoulder in Sindarin and Quenya, rising briefly before settling into murmurs. You smell cold stone where the night has gathered in the joints between the paving slabs. At your feet, a loose fragment of white masonry is worn smooth by countless footsteps. The western wind reaches the square in long breaths, carrying the distant suggestion of surf. From somewhere behind you comes the scrape of weapons being gathered for departure. Some of the lies in Fëanor's speech originated with Melkor himself, although they now return to the Noldor clothed in the language of injury. Melkor had planted suspicion in earlier years, suggesting that the Valar wished to confine the elves and preserve the world for their own purposes. Fëanor does not know every falsehood's source, or perhaps he no longer cares to separate truth from accusation. His anger has become a furnace in which different materials melt together. You see how easily a true death can lend authority to an uncertain claim. Finwë is dead, the Silmarils are gone, and the trees have fallen, while the Valar remain powerful in the west. To many listeners, this arrangement feels like proof. The speech is delivered in the year commonly numbered 1495 of the years of the trees, according to the Annals of Aman chronology, though the number carries little comfort beneath the ruined sky. The year seems present in the stones around you, not as a mark carved into them, but as a pressure upon every moment. That reckoning has become a boundary dividing memory from consequence. The great square glows beneath its rows of torches, yet the illumination never reaches the upper walls. There, darkness gathers in the carved recesses and along the roofs, making the city appear taller and more remote. The crowd shifts with a muted rustling, and the movement passes through it like wind crossing a field of reeds. The black sky above Tirion offers neither dawn nor direction. From the lower road, the coastal air arrives colder than before, and a wet gleam forms on the stones. A belt is tightened nearby, a scabbard is fastened, and another weapon touches the ground with a quiet click. Fëanor tells the Noldor that they must follow him to Middle-earth, where Morgoth has fled with the Silmarils. He speaks as though the western shore is already behind them and the eastern lands already waiting beneath a new dawn. You hear him call the people away from Aman, away from the protection of the Valar, and towards the place where their stolen light may be reclaimed. His confidence has the manner of a king, although the authority around him has not been formally granted by every voice in the square. He grieves for Finwë as a son, yet speaks for the Noldor as though his father's crown has settled upon his own brow. His words contain a real desire for freedom, not merely a desire for revenge. That desire passes through the crowd, finding listeners who have never imagined that the road west could be abandoned. Cold vapor lies above the lower streets, and torchlight enters it in broken columns. You stand where the paving slopes towards the northern gates, looking across the shoulders of the crowd. The white walls of Tirion rise like cliffs, carrying the voices of the square upwards until they become a distant murmur among the houses. A faint sootiness marks the edges of several torches, and the smell of burning oil mingles with wool, leather, and rain-damp hair. The darkness makes every person seem partly concealed, even when a face is close enough to recognize. Beneath your boots, the stones are uneven from generations of use. Somewhere beyond the city, the sea continues its patient movement against the shore, though you cannot yet hear its waves. Wind from the western coast enters through the passageways, and the gathered weapons answer it with small sounds of metal and wood. Fingolfin listens to Fëanor with a composed face, although disagreement lies plainly within him. He understands the danger of abandoning Aman and the danger of allowing anger to determine the fate of the Noldor. Many others share his hesitation, remembering the peace that once existed beneath the light of the trees. Yet Finwë's murder has opened a wound in the house of the Noldor, and the theft of the Silmarils has made patience seem almost like surrender. Fingolfin and many others follow Fëanor despite their disagreement. They do not all accept his account, but they cannot remain behind while the people move away. The decision forms gradually through thousands of private fears. No single voice commands the departure, yet the whole city begins to lean towards the coast. The square grows warmer near the torches, though the warmth does not reach your hands. You hold them close to a flame for a moment, and the light reveals the fine dust settled upon your sleeves. Behind you, white steps descend towards shadowed lanes where families are still gathering belongings. Before you, the crowd opens and closes around Fëanor as people move forward to hear him more clearly. The air carries the dry scent of old banners and the sharper smell of oil-soaked wood. A gust descends from the upper city, causing several flames to narrow into blue-edged points. The black sky remains visible between the roofs, without the faintest promise of morning. Along the eastern margin of the square, weapons are stacked briefly against a wall before being redistributed. Their surfaces catch the torchlight whenever someone passes, then disappear again into the night. The name Morgoth becomes familiar upon Fëanor's tongue, and you hear it repeated by others with varying degrees of disbelief. It means the Black Enemy, a name chosen after Melkor's deeds have made his older name unbearable. Each repetition turns the word from a private judgment into a public declaration. Fëanor says that the Noldor cannot remain where their greatest treasure has been stolen and their king has been slain. He promises no easy victory, but his language makes departure sound like the only honorable answer. The Silmarils become the center of his appeal, shining in memory, even though their light is absent from the world. He joins the grief of Finwë to the demand for freedom, and freedom to the pursuit of Morgoth. In this manner, three separate causes become one road leading eastward. Across the square, a banner hangs without movement from a high balcony, its embroidered devices barely visible in the torchlight. The fabric has gathered moisture, and each fold appears heavier than the last. You hear sandals and boots crossing the stone behind you, while the voices of the Noldor drift over the walls in overlapping waves. Some speak of Finwë, some of the jewels, and others of the road to Middle-earth. Their words mingle with the soft hiss of torches consuming oil. The air near the ground is colder, carrying a trace of seaweed from the distant shore. A metal ring rolls beneath a bench before coming to rest against a step. No one retrieves it. Above the city, the sky seems black enough to conceal every direction, while the road westward remains open only in memory. The wind moves through Tirion as if searching for the absent light. Fëanor's speech does not end with an appeal for patience or a request for permission. He calls the Noldor to follow him, and the command makes the square seem smaller. You see some listeners bow their heads, while others turn towards the roads as though already measuring the distance to the coast. In Fëanor's telling, the Valar have become powers that restrict the freedom of the Noldor, and protection is recast as a chain. His accusation is partly born from Melkor's old lies, yet it finds support in a real frustration that has gathered for years. The Noldor are powerful, skilled, and restless, and Aman has seemed both home and enclosure. At the centre of the square, Fëanor grieves for Finwë while speaking with the confidence of a king. His anger gives him a terrible clarity. A low cloud moves across the upper darkness, though no edge can be clearly seen. The torches cast small halos upon the white walls, and the shadows between them remain deep enough to hide a doorway. You hear leather straps being fastened and spear butts scraping against the paving. A cloak brushes your arm as someone passes towards the southern road, carrying a bundle wrapped in grey cloth. The bundle gives off the faint scent of cedar and old wool. Near the centre of the square, a brazier has been fed with fresh wood, and its smoke rises slowly before bending towards the west. The warmth touches your face, then fades as the wind changes. Beyond the walls, the coast waits in darkness, felt more than heard as a broad coldness moving steadily inland. Before the people begin their journey, Fëanor and his 7 sons stand together beneath the torches. Their faces are marked by the same severe light, although each expression holds a different kind of resolve. You hear the oath of Fëanor spoken before the assembled Noldor, with Ilúvatar invoked as witness to every word. The vow binds the brothers to pursue any being who takes or withholds a Silmaril. Its terms do not limit their future enemies to Morgoth alone. The wording reaches towards elves, men, Maiar, Valar, and other beings who might possess one of the jewels and refuse to surrender it. You sense the danger in this breadth while the words are still being uttered. The oath is not merely a promise to recover what Morgoth has stolen. It is a promise whose reach extends beyond any enemy presently named. A silence settles over the great square when the oath is spoken, and even the wind seems briefly restrained. Torchlight trembles across the 7 sons, catching upon their hair and the edges of their weapons. You notice how the flames reflect in polished metal without becoming jewels themselves. The white walls receive the oath in fragments, returning certain words after the speakers have moved beyond them. Around you, the Noldor stand close enough for the warmth of their bodies to gather beneath the night air. The stones feel damp through the soles of your feet. Smoke from the brazier drifts low, carrying the bitter scent of resin and charcoal. At the far end of the square, a horse stamps once, and its harness gives a small wooden creak. The black sky above Tirion remains empty, while the western wind presses quietly against every cloak. The faces around you change as the meaning of the oath begins to settle. A few listeners look towards the dark western heights, where the Valar remain beyond the city and beyond immediate answer. Others stare at Fëanor's sons, perhaps admiring the severity of their promise, perhaps fearing what it may demand later. The torches burn lower, and the smoke thickens beneath the night. Along one wall, several shields lean together, their painted surfaces dulled by soot and damp. You hear a bowstring tested with a soft twang, followed by a careful adjustment of the wood. The paving carries the cold of the earth upwards through your boots. A gust from the western coast moves across the square, bringing salt and wet grass. It lifts the edge of a banner and lets it fall again, as if the city itself were breathing under the black sky. Once the oath has been spoken, its force enters the decisions of those beneath it. You can feel the future narrowing around the words, although no one yet knows the places where the vow will lead them. The oath will become a driving force in the later exile and the kinslayings. Its promise will follow the Noldor through victories, betrayals, grief, and long years of wandering. It will make surrender impossible for those bound by it, even when the cost of pursuit becomes greater than the value of the jewels. At this moment, however, the oath remains bright with purpose. It seems to promise justice, freedom, and the restoration of Finwë's honor. The limits of those hopes are hidden inside the wording, waiting beyond the coast and beyond the first battle. The night air has become sharper, and the torches burn with tall, restless flames. You feel the cold against your cheeks, while warmth gathers at your shoulders from the crowded bodies nearby. Footsteps descend from the upper streets in a steady rhythm. and the white walls return them as a muted procession. The great square is no longer merely a place of speech. It has become a place of preparation. Packs are tied, cloaks are folded, and weapons are lifted from the ground. The scrape of blades against leather accompanies the shifting crowd. Oil, damp wool, smoke, and salt mingle in the air. Above the rooftops, the black sky conceals the route towards Middle-earth, yet the road is already present in every face turned towards the coast. You remain beneath the torches as Tyrion gathers itself for departure. A herald of the Valor arrives with a warning, and you hear the message carried into the square beneath the darkened sky. The voice does not come as a plea from one uncertain traveler, but as an authoritative summons to remember the danger ahead. The Noldor are warned against continuing their flight. The road beyond Aman is not presented as a simple passage towards freedom, and the consequences of rebellion are placed before them with grave clarity. You watch the message pass over the crowd, touching some people with fear and others with resentment. Fëanor receives the warning without lowering his head. His grief for Finwë, his anger towards Morgoth, and his suspicion of the Valor have already joined into one decision. A warning from the west may still command respect, but it cannot dissolve the oath that holds him. The herald's words fade among the walls, and the gathering remains. The herald's presence seems to cool the square, though the torches continue to burn. You notice the smoke drawing eastward in a narrow line, while the larger wind from the western coast moves around it. Faint rain begins somewhere beyond the city, making a soft sound upon distant roofs. The paving beneath you is rough with sand carried inland from the shore. Around the square, the Noldor stand in clusters, their attention divided between the herald and the road. Some hands rest upon sword hilts, while others hold tightly to travel bundles. The white walls glow whenever a torch flares, then return to shadow. A horse breathes steam near the gate, and the animal's breath vanishes almost as soon as it appears. Above all of this, the black sky seems without answer, and the darkness gives no sign that the warning has been heard. Fëanor rejects the warning and continues towards the coast. You see the decision expressed first in his movement as he turns from the herald and walks down from the great square. No elaborate reply is needed, because his silence makes the direction unmistakable. The people begin to follow. Fingolfin follows, though disagreement remains within him, and many other Noldor move beside them despite the danger. Their departure is not a single marching line, but a gathering of families, craftsmen, warriors, children, and those who have chosen to place themselves beneath Fëanor's purpose. The city does not release them easily. Houses remain lit behind them, and familiar courtyards lie in darkness along the descending streets. Yet the oath has made return more difficult than departure. The road leads towards the western coast, where ships and uncertainty wait beyond Tyrion's last white terraces. The streets beneath the square narrow between high walls, and torchlight falls in strips across the stones. You move among those leaving, hearing the subdued conversation of people who have not yet learned how to speak of exile. Doors remain open in some houses, revealing shelves, lamps, and rooms prepared for a peace that has ended. Elsewhere, shutters are drawn tight against the wind. The air smells of wet marble and extinguished fires, while the western breeze carries a stronger taste of salt. Behind you, Tyrion's highest towers fade into the blackness, their pale surfaces visible only where a torch has been left burning. Ahead, the road slopes down towards the unseen sea. Metal touches metal as weapons shift against belts, and the familiar sound becomes part of the night's steady rhythm. Your cloak gathers dampness along its edge, and the cold travels slowly through the cloth. The Noldor continue downward, and you sense that their former peace has become something remembered rather than recoverable. The speech in the great square has transformed sorrow into movement, and the oath has transformed movement into obligation. Fëanor walks at the head of the people with the bearing of a king, although the future will test every claim made beneath the torches of Tyrion. Finwë's death remains the beginning of the journey, and the stolen Silmarils remain its declared purpose. Morgoth, the Black Enemy, waits somewhere beyond the western lands with the jewels in his possession. Yet the oath has already reached further than Morgoth, binding its speakers to pursue any who might withhold a Silmaril. The words travel with the Noldor more faithfully than any banner. The lower road is darker than the square, and the torches become fewer as the city gives way to open ground. You hear the last voices carrying across Tyrion's white walls, growing fainter with every step. Behind you, the great square holds its scattered fires like embers in a vast black hearth. Before you, the land descends through damp grass and low stone walls towards the coast. Wind from the west moves steadily over the fields, carrying spray from the distant water. The smell of rain is stronger here, mingling with salt and the green scent of crushed leaves. Packs shift upon shoulders, and buckles knock softly against shields. Someone closes a wooden case with great care, while another traveler whispers a name that is lost beneath the wind. The black sky stretches above the road, and the darkness no longer belongs only to Tyrion. The coast appears gradually, first as a pale line beneath the darkness, and then as a wider absence where the land falls away. You stand among the Noldor while the wind moves freely across the open ground. The sound of the sea reaches you in long, low intervals, rising and fading beneath the tread of the departing host. Behind you, Tyrion remains visible as a faint arrangement of torchlight, its white walls reduced to dim shapes against the altered heavens. Fëanor and his 7 sons continue ahead, and the others follow in a widening stream. Fingolfin walks with them, carrying disagreement into the same uncertain future. No one can restore the light of the trees by returning to the city, and no one can make the oath unspoken. The Noldor move together towards the coast, unable to return to the peace they knew. The wind receives them in silence. You leave the diminishing radiance of Tyrion behind, following the long road towards the coast where Ulqualondare rests beneath the altered heavens. The city appears gradually through the darkness, its white towers gathered beside the sea while pale surf moves between the quays. Ahead, the Teleri keep watch among their swan-shaped vessels, guarding the ships that alone can carry the Noldor across the broad water. Behind you, the host descends in uneasy silence, bearing weapons, provisions, and the burden of an oath that has grown heavier with every mile. Sea spray touches your face as you enter the white harbour of Ulqualondare, and salt settles coldly upon your lips. Smooth piers shine beneath the stars, polished by countless feet and washed by waves that fold softly against the shore. The Teleri ships lie close together, their curved prows resembling pale birds resting upon the dark water. Ropes creak against their posts, and loose canvas stirs whenever the wind passes between the towers. The harbour smells of salt, wet timber, woven cord, and the faint sweetness of flowers growing along the sea walls. All around you, the night remains beautiful, though its beauty now carries a fragile stillness. Fëanor comes before the Teleri and asks for their ships, speaking with the urgency of one who believes delay will strengthen Morgoth. The Teleri refuse him, for the vessels belong to their people, and their hearts remain bound to the sea. Their ships were made for voyaging, music, and the quiet pleasure of returning beneath familiar stars, not for rebellion against the Valar. Fëanor argues that the Noldor have suffered loss and must depart, while the Teleri answer that their devotion does not require them to serve his oath. Around you, the dispute gathers force, with each reply narrowing the space between anger and violence. You stand beside the harbour wall while the voices rise, and the tide draws pale lines along the stones below. Moonlight, though diminished, rests upon the water like a thin veil of silver dust. The Teleri move between their ships with measured caution, placing hands upon ropes and oars, as though ordinary work might preserve the evening. Noldorin swords remain sheathed, yet their metal catches the light whenever someone turns. Gulls call once above the rooftops and then disappear into the dark. The sea continues its patient breathing, indifferent to the quarrel unfolding beside it. The first kinslaying begins at Alqualondare when Fëanor's followers attack the Teleri and try to seize the ships by force. What begins as a struggle along the quays becomes a battle among vessels, warehouses, and narrow streets. Many Teleri are killed while resisting, and many Noldor fall beneath weapons raised by those who had once been their kindred. You see familiar faces vanish into smoke and confusion, while cries pass from one end of the harbor to the other. The ships remain at the center of the conflict, and every plank seems to demand a price before it will bear the exiles away. The hush after the kinslaying settles over Alqualondare with a weight greater than the noise that preceded it. Broken oars drift near the harbor mouth, turning slowly in dark water among scraps of cloth and splintered wood. Blood darkens the white stones, and sea spray moves across it in thin, bright threads. Doors stand open beneath silent balconies, while abandoned lamps tremble in the wind. You hear no song from the Teleri now, and no clear command from the Noldor, only the small sounds of breathing, armor, and water touching stone. The harbor has become still without becoming peaceful. The Valar do not provide the Noldor with ships for their rebellion, and the Teleri vessels become the means by which Fëanor's host leaves Aman. Those who survive the fighting take the ships from Alqualondare, carrying their victory as an accusation against themselves. The fleet gathers in disorder, with some vessels damaged and others crowded beyond their intended number. Fëanor insists that the journey must continue, while Fingolfin's people follow, because the road behind them has closed. You embark among those who remain, hearing the boards groan beneath weapons, food, and grief. The coast of Aman recedes as the oars begin to move. Oars strike the water in an uneven rhythm, never quite settling into one measure beneath the hands of the rowers. Some blades enter the sea cleanly, while others catch the surface and send cold drops across your sleeves. The harbor lights diminish behind you, scattered along Alqualondare like embers left upon a hearth. Wind travels over the open water and presses salt against your cheeks before weakening among the crowded ships. Nobody sings during the crossing, and the silence between the strokes seems to contain the names of those left behind. Above, the heavens offer no answer, while beneath, the dark sea carries the fleet northward. The Noldor journey north through Aman beneath the growing shadow of what they have done. At the coast of Araman, the doom of Mandos is pronounced before the host, its words carrying the cold authority of judgment. It warns of grief, betrayal, and the consequences attached to the oath and the kinslaying. You hear that the road ahead will not lead simply to freedom, because every promise has become joined to blood. The doom tells of those who will be betrayed, those who will betray, and those who will lose everything while pursuing the Silmarils. The warning does not dissolve the host, though it changes the quality of every footstep. Wind moves over the northern coast and carries a taste of snow, even before the mountains appear. The ships rest upon dark water beneath a sky stripped of warmth, and frost gathers along the rails. You draw your cloak closer while distant ice breaks somewhere beyond the visible shore. Oars are lifted, ropes are coiled, and the fleet waits in a silence broken only by hulls touching gently together. Faces look towards the horizon, pale beneath starlight, with eyes reflecting neither hope nor certainty. The sea around you seems immense, and Aman behind you seems farther away than distance alone could explain. The doom of Mandos remains among the Noldor as they consider the path before them, but Fëanor refuses to turn aside. He believes the Silmarils must be recovered and Morgoth pursued, whatever sorrow the Valar have placed upon the road. Fingolfin's people continue with him, bound by kinship, pride, and the absence of any simple return. The host moves onward until the final shores of Aman lie behind the fleet, and the northern ice begins to define their future. You understand that exile has become more than departure, because it now includes the judgment carried within every traveller. Ice forms in slender plates along the water, brushing against the ships with a dry and delicate sound. Wind comes low across the sea, carrying snow that gathers upon the dark decks and melts beneath your hands. Far away, the mountains stand without colour, their ridges concealed beneath cloud and drifting white. The oars rise and fall slowly, each stroke demanding effort from bodies already weakened by fear. Wet ropes stiffen, timber contracts, and the salt upon your clothing becomes cold against your skin. The north offers no shelter, only a widening silence in which the doom seems to breathe. Fëanor's host reaches Loscar in Middle-earth after crossing by ship, and the shore appears beneath a sky reddened by the first suggestion of dawn. The landing is difficult, for the beach is dark, uneven, and scattered with stones unfamiliar to those who have known Aman. Fëanor orders the ships drawn above the tide line, while Fingolfin's people remain among the vessels and expect the passage to continue. You watch the hosts divide along the shore, though no word yet declares the separation final. Behind you, the sea stretches back towards the land of light, and before you, Middle-earth waits beneath cloud. The sand at Loscar is black beneath your boots, and damp smoke seems to rise from the ground before the fires are made. Waves move in long, heavy lines, throwing red-brown reflections beneath the paling sky. The ships creak as they settle upon the shore, their pale sides marked by spray and travel. Gulls circle without calling, while wind drags loose strands of hair across your face. Inland, low hills disappear beneath mist, and the unfamiliar air carries scents of ash, resin, wet earth, and distant forests. The world feels broader here, yet less merciful. Rather than return the ships to Fingolfin's host, Fëanor orders them burned at Loscar, choosing irreversible separation over renewed cooperation. Flames climb from vessel to vessel, passing across the dry timbers with astonishing speed. You see the fire spread along the beach, consuming the ships taken from the Teleri and closing the western road behind the Noldor. Fingolfin's people watch from the far shore, understanding at last that Fëanor has abandoned them. Red light reveals raised hands, frozen faces, and the first hard outlines of a division that no later sorrow can entirely mend. Fire reflects upon the dark sea at Loscar, where burning ships lean and collapse amid clouds of sparks. Smoke drifts low over the water, turning the horizon into a blurred line of copper and grey. The flames illuminate ropes, shields, wet stones, and the faces of those who have chosen Fëanor's path. Far across the shore, Fingolfin's people stand beyond the reach of the fire, small figures beneath a vast and lightless sky. You smell scorched wood and salt together, while the waves continue arriving with the calm rhythm of an older world. Fingolfin's people are left upon the far shore and must cross the Helcaraxe, the grinding ice between Aman and Middle-earth. Their journey begins without ships, without certainty that those ahead will wait, and without any promise that the doom can be escaped. You follow them northward along frozen margins, where every step breaks through crusted snow into bitter water. The host carries what can be saved, but much is abandoned beneath the weight of exhaustion. Behind them lies Aman, while ahead lies a passage that seems less like a road than a long wound across the sea. Ice and wind govern the Helcaraxe, leaving little space for speech or rest beneath the pale northern sky. Sharp ridges rise from frozen water, their surfaces blue in shadow and white wherever light touches them. Snow drives sideways across the path, stinging your face and collecting in the folds of your garments. The sound of cracking ice travels beneath your feet, deep and hollow, as if the sea were shifting in sleep. Around you, the exhausted host moves carefully between crevices, while each breath becomes a brief cloud before disappearing. The passage across the Helcaraxe demands losses from Fingolfin's people, and the doom of Mandos seems present in every failing body and broken burden. Some fall into the freezing water, while others remain behind because strength has left them. You hear no proclamation declaring the cost complete, for the ice itself provides the only measure. Those who continue carry the memory of the dead beside them, just as they carry knowledge that Fëanor's ships burned at Losca. The journey binds the survivors through suffering, though it also deepens the wound between the two houses. Sea ice groans beneath the pressure of distant currents, and the sound rolls through the frozen darkness in long, uneven waves. Frost gathers in your hair and along the edges of your sleeves, while the wind searches beneath every layer of cloth. The white landscape offers no landmark, except occasional black openings where water moves below. You place each foot carefully, listening for hollowness beneath the snow and feeling cold enter through the soles. Somewhere beyond the ridges, the western shore fades into cloud, and the thought of Losca becomes a distant red memory. Fëanor's first assault on Morgoth's forces in Middle-earth takes place after the exile begins, when he leads his followers against the enemy near the borders of Angband. He believes speed will surprise Morgoth and recover the Silmarils before the Dark Lord can strengthen his armies. The assault advances with the fierce confidence that has carried the Noldor from Aman. You cross unfamiliar ground beneath smoke-filled skies, while enemy banners gather in the distance. The battle becomes confused and costly, and the brightness of Fëanor's purpose cannot protect those who follow him. Ash lies across the plain like grey powder, soft beneath your feet and lifting whenever wind passes over the earth. The air tastes of iron, burned grass, and distant stone, while heat rises from fissures hidden beneath dark soil. Armored figures move through the haze, their outlines appearing and vanishing between gusts of smoke. Behind you, the campfires of the Noldor burn low, and ahead, the land climbs towards Morgoth's stronghold. Every sound seems muffled by ash, except the occasional clash that rolls across the plain and fades into the western wind. Fëanor reaches the limits of his strength during the assault, and Balrogs come forth from Angband to surround him. He is wounded, overwhelmed, and finally killed by them, ending the life of the Maker who began the rebellion. You see him carried from the field beneath a darkening sky, still fierce in spirit, though his body can no longer continue. His death does not restore those slain at Alqualondare, reopen the road to Aman, or loosen the doom spoken by Mandos. The first great leader of the exile has fallen, while Morgoth remains beyond the battlefield. Night gathers over the battlefield, and smoke thins into ribbons that drift across the trampled ground. Small fires burn among broken weapons, their flames bending low whenever wind crosses the plain. The scent of ash clings to your clothing, mingling with the cold smell of iron and dampness rising from the earth. Somewhere far away, a wounded horse moves through the darkness, its steps slow and uncertain. The Noldor stand among the remains of the assault, listening to the empty spaces where commands once came. Above them, the stars appear remote and colorless. The Silmarils remain in Morgoth's possession after Fëanor's death, shining within the darkness that the exile was meant to challenge. His 7 sons remain bound by the oath, though the voice that first pronounced it has fallen silent. You see them gather around their father's memory, carrying forward his anger, his promise, and the old demand that the jewels be recovered. No successor can soften the oath without betraying it, and no victory has yet placed even one Silmaril within their hands. The war therefore continues beyond the death of its founder, nourished by absence and inheritance. A quiet wind passes over the field, cooling the stones and lifting ash from the edges of discarded shields. Fires near the camp settle into red hollows, glowing beneath their crusts before fading into smoke. You stand beneath a sky resembling the one above Losca, though the sea is far away and no burning ships mark the horizon. The ground remains warm in places, while frost begins forming in shaded hollows. Around you, the survivors speak softly of Fëanor, Morgoth, the Silmarils, and the oath that now belongs to his sons. The exile transforms the Silmarils from treasured works of craft into the cause of a long history of war and grief. Their beauty remains unchanged, yet their meaning has been altered by the blood shed at Alqualondare, the doom of Mandos, and the burning of Losca. You carry their image through every later hardship, seeing in them both the lost light of the trees and the destructive force of desire. The jewels become a distant center around which kingdoms rise, alliances fail, and families divide. What began as the work of one master becomes a history extending far beyond his life. Along the shores of Middle-earth, the tide moves beneath a sky without the radiance once known in Aman. Salt wind reaches your face, though Alqualondare lies beyond the western horizon, and its white stones remain close to you. You hear imagined oars striking water in uneven rhythm. Then the sound fades into the deeper movement of the sea. Far away, the red fire at Losca has gone out, leaving only smoke within memory. The cold of the Helcaraxe remains in the bones of those who crossed, while the hush after the kinslaying persists within every silence. Fëanor is dead, Morgoth still holds the Silmarils, and the oath continues without the maker who gave it shape. Fingolfin's people have entered Middle-earth by a road of ice, while Fëanor's host stands upon a land reached through fire. The two branches of the Noldor now face the same enemy from separate beginnings, carrying different memories of betrayal and loss. You stand among them beneath unfamiliar stars, with the long years of Middle-earth opening quietly before you. The exile has taken its first steps, and the darkness ahead contains both kingdoms and ruin. The sea breathes against the shore in patient intervals, leaving a narrow gleam upon the sand before withdrawing into darkness. Wind moves through the grasses behind you, bending them in soft waves that catch the last grey light. Smoke from distant fires thins above the land, losing its red color as night deepens. You feel the roughness of travel-worn cloth beneath your hands, and lingering salt upon your skin recalls the western coast. Nothing around you returns to its former shape, yet the earth receives each footprint without judgment. The Noldor continue into Middle-earth beneath the weight of their names, their dates, their vows, and the places that have already become memories. Alqualondare remains the harbor of the first kinslaying, Losca the shore of burning ships, and the Helcaraxe the road through ice and wind. You carry those places together, as though they were distant rooms within one darkened house. The doom of Mandos travels beside you, speaking of grief and betrayal whenever the road grows quiet. Ahead, Morgoth waits with the Silmarils, while behind, the light of Aman has become unreachable. At last, the wind falls almost completely, and only the low movement of water remains beneath the stars. The shore grows indistinct, the fires become small points, and the figures around you settle into stillness. Somewhere beyond the darkness, the sons of Fëanor keep their oath, while Fingolfin's people gather strength after the ice. The jewels remain far away, held within the fortress of the enemy, yet their light continues to govern every choice. You remain beneath the wide sky of Middle-earth, listening as the first chapter of exile becomes the beginning of a much longer sorrow.